Yeah, it is 3 o'clock. So I think Dr. Rajiv Kumar was already connected. I want to just check whether he is on board. And then we start. Meera, can you confirm with Dr. Rajiv Kumar?
Can you not see me, Nagesh? I'm on board.
Oh, excellent, Rajiv. Very nice.
Yeah.
So, excellent. Then we start. Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Chairman, our chief guest for this afternoon, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog and an old friend, Professor V.K. Malhotra, Member Secretary ICSSR, my former colleague from UN system, Rene van Berkel, who heads the UNIDO in South Asia, distinguished panelists and distinguished members of this audience. It's a privilege to welcome you to the policy roundtable on the reigniting sustainable growth of MSMEs in the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm sure you all agree with me that this is a very timely theme for a discussion today. MSMEs, as we know, are the backbones and the engines of growth of Indian economy. And all businesses have been hit by the pandemic. Every one of us has been hit in one way or the other. But MSMEs as a group have been the worst sufferers of this pandemic among all the businesses. Hence, we begin to recover from the aftermath of this pandemic. I think it is time to take a stock of how MSMEs are doing and what challenges they are facing in their recovery, because they are ultimately the drivers of Indian economy. And so this is, the thought which was behind us when we set up this meeting. And we are very grateful to have all of you together with us. And in particular, our chief guest, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, and our partners in ISISR, Professor Malhotra and Rene, UNIDO. So without any further ado, because the program is very packed this afternoon, without any further ado, may I now invite our chairman, Mr. S.K. Mishra, to deliver his opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nagesh. Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Professor V.K. Malhotra, Mr. Rene van Berkel, Mr. Nagesh Kumar, distinguished speakers, friends, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of ISID, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this policy roundtable on a very timely theme, MSMEs, where we are very glad to have today representing government, entrepreneurs, business associations, and academics. Micro, small, and medium enterprises form the backbone of the Indian economy, with 45% share of manufacturing output, more than 40% of exports, and over 28% share of GDP. MSMEs provided jobs to about 111 million people. They are key drivers of inclusive and sustainable economic growth and poverty reduction, and are breeding grounds for entrepreneurship. Given that majority of SMEs are informal, they have been the worst affected from the lockdown imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of them had to close down their businesses, while others have scaled down their operations because of demand and supply constraints. A number of support measures have been taken by the government over the past year to assist the MSMEs. We need to examine whether these measures have been adequate, and if not, what needs to be done to reignite the growth of MSMEs to enable them to drive India's economic revival from COVID-19 pandemic. Further, in the context of the need to address issues relating to the development of the rural sector, it assumes added importance. I'm happy that we have with us today a very senior policymaker of the country and a renowned economist in Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman, Niti Aayog, Government of India, to set the tone of our discussion. Also wish to welcome our partners for this roundtable, namely ISID-ICSSR and UNIDO. Professor V.K. Malhotra, a member of our board and member secretary of the Indian Council of Social Science Research, is, apart from heading ICSR, which supports ISID, he is always supportive of different initiatives by the Institute. I'm also happy to welcome Mr. Rene van Barkel, UNIDO representative in India. UNIDO is the key United Nations agency engaged in promotion of the industry. Hence, UNIDO is our natural partner for this and many other activities. I'm happy to see many other senior people in the panel today, including Mr. Shiva Subramaniam Raman, PMD of SIDBI, Mr. Sudhir Garg, Joint Secretary of the Ministry, and representatives of key MSME organizations and academics represented here to ensure a good discussion. My warm welcome to all the participants who are attending this policy roundtable, and I look forward to a rich discussion. Once again, my warm welcome to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your opening remarks. May I now call upon Professor V.K. Malhotra, the Member Secretary of ICSR, and as the Chairman said, a big supporter of ISID in all sense of the term. So, Professor Malhotra, you have the floor for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Professor Nagesh Kumar, and very distinguished Shri S.K. Mishra, Professor Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman Niti Aayog, Mr. Rene van Barkel, and lot many people I could see here from policy quarters, from important institutions of the country. I remember a few months back, we were discussing this issue, that this issue of MSME and startup in India needs immediate attention of not only the policy makers, but also the research institutes, which are under the umbrella of ICSR, or maybe doing their independent work also. I feel that it's a very, very important area where India definitely needs to understand few issues. There are issues in policy, there are issues in policy implementation, and there are also issues which would require the interest of the researchers in the country. Dr. Rajiv Kumar perhaps will be one of the most appropriate persons who are well versed with what has been happening and what needs to happen in this domain of micro, small, and medium enterprises. We all understand that India has a population of almost 1.35 billion. If I talk in terms of employment, MSMEs, they provide employment to almost 11.10 crore people. And if you talk in terms of enterprises, there are 633.88 lakhs of enterprises, of which 99% is constituted by micro enterprises. Small enterprises constitute only 0.5% of those, and medium enterprises are just 0.008% of the total enterprises under MSME system. There are a number of things which must definitely attract our attention. For example, there is a big gulf of difference between the concentration of micro enterprises over few states and the states which are ahead in terms of having a greater degree of smaller enterprises or medium enterprises. There are only 4 or 5 states where we could see that medium enterprises, they cross the mark of 1,000 units in those. I think these are some areas. Besides that, we know Prime Minister gave a call of Atmanirbhar Bharat, and where the target is set that in days to come, that if economy has to achieve also the target of 5 trillion economy, the share of these MSME has to be greater than 50% in the total manufacturing area. If we look at some of the figures which have been covered by 73rd round of National Sample Survey, many of us might notice that it has been performing very well, but for the situation caused by COVID, which would definitely need and which needed immediate attention of the policymakers, including RBI, but would need in future also the attention of the policymakers like none other than Dr. Rajiv Kumar. We know the major challenges before MSME sector. They include physical infrastructure bottlenecks, absence of formalization, inertia towards technology adoption, the issue of capacity, backward and forward linkages, lack of access to credit, and access to risk capital. I would not be spending too much time barring 2-3 things, the way some changes have been seen in last few months or maybe last 1 or 2 years. We know that traditional bank system, because when we talk of MSME, the issue of access to credit and risk capital is raised. So formalization of these institutions or these enterprises is one big issue, and their access to credit is another important issue, which would need few researchers also, because as far as delayed payments are concerned, where those payments in the corporate sector, from the public sector, or from the private sector or micro enterprises themselves, where do they intend to, or where should they be taking measures to improve on this front? Besides that, their increased access to credit would definitely need attention in terms of their better capacity in terms of digital technology and digital transactions. We have a system which has today GSTN, income tax, and credit bureaus, where loans can be definitely, or loan proposals can be more expeditiously processed. So with these words, and there is one more area which I would like to highlight, and maybe we would be listening about that, trade receivable discounting system. A lot is yet to be done on that front, and maybe few things have happened, but complete formalization. And since MSMEs have not been adopting technology to the desired extent thus far, I think this should invite the attention of the policymakers. With these words, I would thank ISID for undertaking this initiative to go for this roundtable on MSME like important and burning issue. I'm very sure under the very able leadership of Professor Nagesh Kumar, ISID in future also will be in a position to highlight all possible issues under industrial development of the country. I'm very happy at ICSSR that one of our institutes is in a position to definitely take such initiatives and put to the nation's understanding, better understanding of the nation, all these issues which need attention of the policymakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Malhotra, for your kind words, and also for highlighting the key issues that constrain the MSMEs, including the access to credit and access to technology. With that, let me now turn to Mr. Rene van Berkel, the UNIDO representative in South Asia.
Yes, thank you very much. Namaskar to everyone. Particularly, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Rajiv Kumar, the Vice Chairman of NITI Aayog, whom we work with as the UN system to promote inclusive and sustainable development of India. Professor Nagesh Kumar, my former colleague, but now heading the ISID. So I represent UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. So we are the specialized agency that works with the manufacturing sector. And our mandate is very much along also what we call ISID, or Inclusive and Sustainable Industrial Development, or SDG 9. So we are particularly focusing on manufacturing plants that become factories that are fit for the future because they are productive, they have a quality product, they supply to markets that are satisfied, that without government support, that they also meet and exceed environmental standards, and that also meet social standards, and that will create a decent place to work. We are focusing on manufacturing sector, and of course, manufacturing sector for India is a sector which constantly is hovering around 15 to 16% of GDP. So that is a relatively lower number if we compare to other countries in the Southeast Asia, in East Asia. This is of concern also in terms of long-term prospects for growth and economic development of India. So that is maybe something to consider. And also, if you look further down the data that industrial analytics that UNIDO maintains, we see then that even within manufacturing, there's basically 4, maybe 5 sectors that dominate more than half of manufacturing in terms of manufacturing value and added, as well as export, as well as labor. So that is basically chemicals, textiles, leather, footwear, and food processing. So there is really a need to look also at not just the quantitative growth of the manufacturing sector, but also more diversification. Of course, we are focusing not on manufacturing, but on MSMEs, so micro, small, and medium enterprises, which are indeed essentially the economic and social fabric of India, particularly in urban and rural areas equally. The Indian MSMEs have been set back severely by the pandemic and are largely ill-equipped to bounce back swiftly, with widespread losses observed of jobs, livelihoods, sales, and profits. Service sectors are more severely impacted. So these are then also particularly like hospitality, travel, retail, wellness, and related sectors. These are key sectors for women employment and entrepreneurship. So that's of concern. The dominant micro and small end segments derive strength from diversity, short cycle times, lean financial, managerial, and technical resources. Moreover, many are unorganized, which unfortunately stands in the way of availing and utilizing recovery support. MSMEs' voices remain often unheard, and their economic and social contributions are simply taken for granted. The pandemic crisis, in that sense, underscored that it is a high time to treat the MSME sector more with respect and dignity, and commit to inclusive and sustainable recovery and growth, what is also the theme of today. I would like to maybe use a few figures of the work that we did together with India SMEs Forum. So I see Sushma also on the call. We did a firm level survey during the peak of the second COVID wave, so April, May, and we approached about 500 firms, mainly in manufacturing sector. By exception, only few firms were able to increase sales, only about 14%, 1 in 7, and or profits, 1 in 12 firms was able to improve profits, but most of those saw their business diminishing. 1 in 3 firms lost at least half of its sales, and equally 1 in 3 at least half its profits. Firms in vulnerable manufacturing sectors like garments, footwear, beverages, furniture, etc., reported on average 75% higher reduction in sales and 33% higher reduction in profits than firms in resilient sectors like food, pharma, chemicals, plastics, and automotives. Half of the respondent firms had laid off people. 1 in 6 firms even laid off half or more of their workforces, with more women being laid off than men relative to their share in the respective pre-COVID workforces. These are quite staggering figures, and there has been quite a focus on the financial dimension. But we did last year also some work on looking at what are the drivers for recovery, and then we came to the realization that if you look at manufacturing MSMEs, it's not just the finance, the working capital, but there are a number of other underlying factors that need to be addressed. And we came up with basically 5 that are still valid, I think, today. One is the unpredictability of policy and the the pandemic. The second is the declining and totally disrupted market. So you don't know where you can sell and when and how. And then the third one is the disruption of the labor force, and also the additional provisions that need to be made to have safe workplaces that are hygienic. Fourth one relates to basically stranded assets, stranded inventory, stranded machinery, and that also basically deteriorates during its lifetime and cannot be restarted. And then the fifth one is maybe the disruption of the supply chains. So also with India SME Forum and with Empatech program and UN India Business Forum, we put together then a recovery pathway for MSME sector, building back business from crisis, B3C MSME, which really focuses on how can we apply common sense of good practices in terms of management to address this COVID pandemic. I think that the pandemic has really highlighted the need to change workplace and procedures to work productively together in a safe and hygienic manners. Manufacturing units in particular have then the opportunity to turn this necessity into a new opportunity for recovery, rejuvenation and growth, based on the principles and practices of manufacturing excellence, starting with basically cleaning out factories and workshops. We sometimes refer to that as Swachh Udyog. UNIDO approaches this from three complementary angles. Firstly, it's the efficiency of all inputs, including materials, energy, and water and chemicals. There are still lots to gain by energy efficiency, materials efficiency, and water efficiency. Just if I give you some examples, as energy efficiency is clearly a point in case. With Bureau of Energy Efficiency, BE, we supported the implementation of 600 energy measures in 350 MSMEs that then annually save over 10,000 tons of oil equivalent, worth 59 crores of cumulative investment, cumulative savings against 90 crores of investment. So payback time 1.5 years. Secondly, effectiveness in terms of outputs meeting customer demand through lean manufacturing concepts and methods. Also here, there's a general understanding of the 5S and other approaches, but really driving this to implementation is still a challenge. We work with ACMA, the Automotive Components Manufacturing Association. We supported 7 clusters with a total of 42 MSMEs that are able to achieve a collective savings of 2.8 crores with virtually no investment, while also achieving significant reductions of rejects, absenteeism, and then all zero out unsafe work conditions. Third element of the Swachh Udyog or manufacturing excellence is then the maturity, which relates to the firm's ability to observe, understand, predict, and adapt its business process for optimal outcomes. Digital technologies then, and of course, plays an enabling role. However, require parallel improvements in teamwork, anticipation, and problem solving of individuals and teams alike to deliver real-time benefits. It's not just the digital technologies, but it's the match between digital enablement and company capabilities. MSMEs are the backbone to the Indian economy. That stands uncontested. Total contribution to economy, job creation, exports, and indeed suppliers of essential goods and services to government and large and transnational corporations. One might actually say without MSME, the economy and society would come to stand still. However, one of the challenges that MSMEs are extremely diverse, including, for example, high-tech startups, innovators, low-tech backyard or street-side workshops or producer groups, employing just a few up to thousands. We have an MSME definition that goes up to a turnover of 250 crores, which in an international context is extremely large enterprise already. Policy and support measures are to cater to this massive diversity and address specific needs of specific subsets of MSMEs. Despite many good examples, by and large, particularly the micro and small enterprises still underperform large and medium enterprises in terms of productivity, quality, waste, effluents, emissions, work environment, safety, and employment condition. This is of concern to UNIDO, as it means that economic and job opportunities are wasted and the health and safety of workers and communities and environment put at risk. I think that it is important that we look at strategies, that we have collaboration with employers, employees, workers, professional associations to really address this issue of underperformance of the MSME, of the particularly small and medium enterprise, or micro and small enterprises, sorry, in the manufacturing sector. So with that, I hand back to you, Nagesh, and I really look forward to the rest of the discussion to focus on the productivity, quality, efficiency of manufacturing MSMEs, how we can help that goal being achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rene, and especially for sharing insights from your work in UNIDO in collaboration with the SME groups. Now it's my distinct honor to invite our friend Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, to deliver his inaugural address. And as Chairman said in the beginning, he's a renowned economist and needs no introduction for this audience. So Rajiv, we are very honored by your presence, and over to you. So you have the floor. You are muted. Rajiv, you are muted.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nagesh. I hope you can hear me. Yeah. So, Honorable Mr. Mishra, friend Dr. V.K. Malhotra, Mr. Rene Van Berkel, representative of UNIDO, Mr. Subramaniam Raman, Chairman CMD of ISID-ICSSR, and of course, my very dear friend Nagesh, and also a number of friends whom I've seen in the audience, like Ram Gopal Agarwal, Dr. Radhna Agarwal, and several others who are here. Good afternoon to you, and namaskar, and want to thank Nagesh for this opportunity to come and interact with you on a very important subject. And I'm sure that all of us will agree that your maiden event being focused on MSMEs would really gladden the heart of the founder of ISID, Professor S.K. Goel. He was committed to them, and he saw MSMEs as the heart of the industrial development in India. And I think it's a very good augury that we have started off on this particular note, because this is the sector which needs the attention, most attention of not only all my academic friends, but as many people have said, the policy attention and the attention of all the other stakeholders which are there. This is a sector on which lot is talked about, lot is written about, but I dare say some of their challenges remain unmet until very recently, and are still to a large extent unmet, but still the government is trying to do whatever it can in this regard. So, all the best wishes for ISID, and we've started, as I said, on just the right front foot to deal with it. And I hope, but just one suggestion right away in the beginning. Yes, I know manufacturing is important, but there are a large number of small and medium enterprises in the services sector too. And the recent announcement by the government of including retail and wholesale trade as part of the MSMEs is a direction, is a signal in that direction, that they also need to be modernized. They also face similar challenges as those in the manufacturing sector. And also that services have proven to be India's competitive advantage. So maybe it's time also to start looking at MSMEs which thrive and which sometimes struggle in the services sector, in software maybe, or in tourism, or in entertainment, or in hospitality industries across the country. And there are a large number there also, and which employ also a very large number of people. So they have a very important role to play, and I'm sure Professor Goel will forgive you, and will in fact will encourage you to spread ISID's wings to cover the services sector as well. So that's the part. Now, friends, all of us have talked about this, and we know, and I don't want to labor the point, that the pandemic has been especially hard on this sector. Really it has been hard. I mean, we have seen, and I think this is one of the things that sort of scares me a bit, because it has led to some kind of a very inequitable growth. All the large corporates, listed companies, have declared the results, and these results are much better in the pandemic year than they were before. Their bottom lines, their profit after taxation has been better. but the smaller, the weaker segment has suffered. And there, I think the figures are that MSME earnings have been hit by up to 50% in very large segments of the sector. And as René Van Berkel pointed out, 1 out of 3 have suffered a profitability and revenue decline. But I should point out that there is a very large number where who have not been able to keep pace, unfortunately, with the changes and have folded up in many areas, especially in those which were called the close contact service areas. And there the MSMEs have not been able to perform, especially many examples. So I think they merit our attention much more going forward, and because of the pandemic. And I think this is why the policy attention must be due. So I'm going to first, friends, talk about what the government has tried to do in this area, and then I'm going to refer to some of the challenges that I think still remain. And finally, I'm going to talk about a couple of initiatives which I think are in the offing and which can be the breakthroughs that MSMEs need going forward. So let me say that the first thing, the government on just in July, as I said earlier, 7th of July, they announced that retail and wholesale trade will be included, and they will be registered on the Udyam registration portal. This will help the MSMEs for private sector lending, and they need it. Second, the RBI has taken several measures to help MSMEs to structure the loan amounts, having an aggregate exposure of up to 25 crore. There was in May 2021, the RBI again, permitted invocation of restructuring till 30th September, and up to 25th June 2021, there were 13 lakh MSME accounts with an aggregate amount of 55,000 crore, which had been restructured through public sector banks. One of the most important things that the Honorable Finance Minister announced early on was the Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme that was launched with an emergency credit line of up to 4.5 lakh crore. The term has been extended up to December, I think, and this is backed by 100% central government guarantee. And that means that the banks, the fear of the banks, the risk aversion of the banks to lend to the MSMEs has been taken care of, because if you lose that first, if you lose up to 10% of the, of default, the government is there to bail you out. And under this scheme, no less than 2.73 lakh crore of rupees has been sanctioned to the MSME sector. And I think this is a wonderful thing. After the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme was launched, we've got now 20,000 crore of subordinate debt being sanctioned for MSMEs, and of this amount, for MSME, 40, up to about March this year, there was about 344 borrowers had taken recourse to this, but the numbers are rising. And then there was a 50,000 crore in equity infusion to the MSME fund of funds, which was done. And I think this was again this 50,000 crore with a government contribution of 10,000 crore and the NSIC Venture Capital Fund, and I think all of this means that the capital, the risk capital requirement of MSMEs, for which they had to approach the market, where the interest rates varied from 2 to 4% per month, could be taken care of, and they could expand capacity as we go forward. I think these are the two very important financial schemes that were launched. And then, as you know, all of you know, and I don't want to repeat it, the new classification of MSMEs has been a real breakthrough. 5 times increase in the turnover and capital limits of medium enterprises. From 50 crore capital investment and 250 crore, the sort of turnover investment means that a much larger segment of our MSMEs are now able to access formal credit and all the other concessions that were available to the MSMEs. And this, friends, I submit to you, may be able to solve the problem of the missing middle in India. Because so far, combined with all the codification of the labor codes, I know that some companies still face it, but now the flexibility given to the company under the new labor codes that were given will probably finally permit MSMEs to not remain dwarfs or midgets as they've always been, but to break through and then become larger and become a part of the regional and global production chains, which they have not been able to do so far, and which has been the real weakness in our country so far, that all the Southeast Asian countries, there the small enterprises are able to play that role, become vendors to the OEMs. In our case, they've not been able to do so so far. This might be the time, that this might be now the situation where this could happen. On the Udyam registration, which is part of the ease of doing business, that you could go there and do it online, I'm very glad to report that as on 31st March, and this figure has the other day, I think the Secretary MSME told us when we had a meeting recently, and I was topic that I'll come to just now, that maybe 10,000 MSMEs are registering on the Udyam portal every day. And up to March 31st, 26.4 lakh MSMEs have already registered under this. And now registering under this means that it's now become mandatory to avail the benefits. And what Professor Malhotra talked about, the formalization of this sector, will come through this means, because once you're there and once you're covered with the GST, then the formalization of the sector, which is required, will begin, because that will also greatly help the situation where, when I was in ICRIA, we had a study that the productivity differential in the same sector between the large firm and the small firm could be as much as 10 times. And that productivity differential also meant that the earnings, the wages, the incomes of those employed in that sector was also 1/10. And that's the differential that we need to sort of, cover up as we go forward. So I think this is, again, a very important step that's been taken. And an online portal, Champions, has been launched on 1st June 2020 by the Honorable Prime Minister himself. And this covers many aspects of e-governance, of MSMEs. The one thing all of this shows is that one of the findings of the UNIDO survey that Mr. René van Berkel mentioned, which is the unpredictability of policy, is no longer the case, or at least will no longer be the case. I think it's very clear, and I want to emphasize this, that this government's commitment to the promotion, expansion, and improvement of MSMEs is without doubt. There can be no question of this wavering in any direction. We will do, and we have done, as you said, and we will continue to do whatever is required to promote this sector as we go forward. And therefore, I find such a workshop to be of immense value, because this can give us the feedback. And please, I invite everybody to give us the honest, candid feedback to us, because unless that happens, policy cannot improve on what it is doing. And as I said, Niti Aayog, and not just Niti Aayog, but the Ministry of MSMEs and everybody and rest of the government is committed to this, and there can be no unpredictability of policy in this regard. Friends, let me come now to the challenges. They've also already been described many times. The recent study by the NSIC, said that the 5, which are important, the most important. Lo and behold, and I think as you expect, liquidity was reported to be the main constraint by 55% of the units. Fresh orders, and that just shows the lack of demand, fresh orders, and especially in COVID, for 17% of units. Labor, only 9%. So please note that only 9%, less than 1/10 of the MSMEs now report labor as a major problem, which is a big change from the previous years as you go. Logistics, and I would include infrastructure in this, is 12% of the units reporting, and availability of raw materials is 8%. That's an empirical study done, as I said, by the NSIC. And on that basis, I think I would define the major challenges to be the availability of credit, including liquidity. Liquidity simply means working capital credit, the sort of, as you say, the trade financing, the technology upgradation, by which relates directly to productivity increases in this sector. Third is marketing linkages, and that's very important, especially market linkages to the external markets, that we have. Although you know that MSMEs contribute to nearly half of exports, 49.81% of exports come from the sector. Logistics, as I said earlier, is I think a very important part. And I've seen this as a major constraint because the costs of logistics in India for industry as a whole is 14%, much higher than 8 or 9% in the other countries. For SMEs, it might go up to 20 or more percent because they face the problem that they have. And then finally, R&D and innovation, especially product innovation. I think this is a big gap. We in Niti Aayog are trying very hard to have, we have established 67 incubation centers in the hope that some of this will come up with innovation that can be supplied directly to the SME sector. I've been in constant dialogue with the CSIR DG, Mr. Dr. Shekhar Mande, and trying to work the NRDC, the National Research Development Corporation, to serve as a major conduit of innovations coming through startups and incubation centers going to MSME. The Atal Innovation Mission has now started a process of SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research, in 6 ministries, including in defense, where it's really taken off, where we are trying to encourage the ministries to give special funds for encouraging innovation from the small and medium enterprises. So that's going on as well. Friends, I think these challenges need to be tackled as rapidly as possible. I've talked about technology. The logistics challenge remains, and others that I mentioned remain to be tackled. I want to just point out one thing that I think people here from the MSME ministry, etc., and others who are specialists will bear me out, that 99% of 63 million units in the country of MSMEs for the last socioeconomic census, 99% are micro. Only 1% are in the range of small and medium enterprises. Now, that means about 6,000 or so, 7,000 are large, the rest are all these micro firms are mostly proprietorships or partnerships at best, so that all their credit requirement is actually a liquidity requirement, effectively. I mean, they're not people who are registered, they're not corporatized, they are actually in the credit field for personalized loans to some extent. And they very often don't have either inventory or assets on which they could offer as collateral for financing. And that's been the major constraint, and which is where informal credit markets, family issues, etc., have to come in. The other day, we had a meeting in Niti Aayog, which was where we had invited Mr. Nandan Nilekani and Sharad Sharma of iSpirit and the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises and several others to talk about a switch from inventory and asset-based finance availability to a cash flow, digital footprint cash availability to the small and medium enterprises. And it was very heartening to see that already the platform has been developed where you can now make that transition in India. Just as UPI made the transition from cash, deposit, etc., to simple, straightforward, banking, and from 60,000 transactions in November 2016 to now 2.3 billion transactions a month happen on UPI. The same thing can happen for the MSMEs, for credit finance and for liquidity finance. This already started in the GEM portal. The first few, I think about 100 invoices raised on GEM were transferred through the sort of digital footprint to the banks, who gave them credit automatically in a matter of minutes, on the basis of the invoices raised, and that problem was solved, the liquidity problem was solved, gone. So the 6-week credit cycle that the MSMEs had to face can be reduced to a few minutes if you take this on. Already, I was told that day, 80 companies in the country, small ones, are practicing digital fintech credit to small and medium enterprises. These could be Ola drivers, these could be small traders, these could be vendors, this could be anybody, and the credit may range from 6,000 to up to 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs. Small credit, quick repayment times, short tenures, cash flow identity linked directly with the from banks to the lender, so that they have a sort of immediate link. All of this done digitally, and we were at that day looking at the prospect that if we create this platform, which Niti Aayog is now taking the lead to do so, all these 17 companies could be on this platform as what we call aggregators, credit aggregators. They can be aggregators who can just simply aggregate the credit demand from the MSMEs and then pass them on to the lender with a credit history which can all be digitized through CIBIL and other means. So friends, the big constraint of credit availability, liquid availability now stands to be solved when we try hard enough. And I appeal to all the academics and scholars who are here to look at this possibility deeper and come up with any suggestions that they might have on this regard. We are on the track to achieving this as we go forward. Finally, and I know I've already spilled over in this very packed program that Nagesh has for us. Luckily for me, he didn't specify a time on the program, so I've been able to carry on. But finally, I must say that the big other problem is technology. And I think the access to product innovation. And we are not very strong in India on product innovation. I still cannot figure out why our R&D expenditure remains 1%, below 1% of GDP. I think this is the time that we need to also maybe set up some non-profit making, and this is a CSIR network, how to relate them more to the MSME sector, how to make the distance between the lab and the land, as Prime Minister says, much shorter than what we have today. We will try our best, but I appeal to you to give us suggestions on how to make our researchers, our people working in CSIR labs, relate much more to the needs of the ground rather than think about publishing in academic journals which are peer-reviewed by their colleagues in other worlds and which maybe cater to demands of other systems and societies. So I think that's the challenge that we have before us. Once more, thank you very much. And once more, congratulations for having such a wonderful audience and a participation that you've got, Nagesh, and all the very best for your innings at ISID. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rajiv. It could not have been better. I think the way you have set the tone of our discussion this afternoon with a very comprehensive overview of the steps that government has taken and how these steps are trying to address the challenges that MSMEs face. I think it was very, very, comprehensive, and as usual, you were scintillating as a speaker. So I think that sets the agenda for this afternoon, and we are very grateful to you, Rajiv, finding time and fitting this into your very busy schedule. I know how busy your schedule was today.
Thank you.
So thank you. And so
never too busy for MSMEs. Yeah, never too busy for MSMEs.
Okay, thank you. So we'll count on your
support. Absolutely.
Bye-bye. So Rajiv has to leave for some other commitments. I was aware of that, and but we will be in touch with him and we'll feed the outcomes of this meeting to him for taking action. Now, let me turn to the distinguished panelists that we have today with us. And the first one is Mr. Siva Subramanian Raman, who is Chairman and Managing Director of very important development financing institution of the country that deals with the financing and credit issues for the small scale sector, MSME sector, SIDBI. So SIDBI is the specialized development financing institution created for this sector. And so there is none other than Mr. Raman to share his insights and approach to deal with the issues that have been raised, and Rajiv developed upon them, reaching credit to the the people in the street and very micro, small entrepreneurs who are often out of the formal system. So over to you, Mr. Raman.
Thank you, Nagesh. I thank the ISID for inviting me to this session. I must confess that I'm amongst several luminaries, so it is really quite an overawing, august body that I'm speaking to. And pardon me for, maybe repeating a few things which the Vice Chairman Niti Aayog spoke about, because he spoke about so many things in such a short span of time. I think he covered so much ground that, it's difficult for the likes of me not to sound repetitive in front of you. But nevertheless, I just need to mention that the space that we're talking about is really a very varied, constituency. We have the medium units, which go all the way up to 250 crores of turnover. And then we have, as correctly pointed out, 99% of entities which are probably single person self-employed units, and they are practically all proprietors. It is really difficult for any policymaker to therefore address the requirements of such a varied segment, but nevertheless, that is really the task that we all have in front of us. SIDBI's role, from I don't need to sort of repeat, even go into what all it has done in the past. It has a completely a stellar history of creating new products. In fact, I'm just 3 months into this role, and I was pleasantly surprised to know that SIDBI was one of the let me say the pioneers of the microfinance industry in India. And I think we still have some great talent within SIDBI in that particular space. And I really start off with the microfinance segment because my understanding is that their ability to deliver credit from what is known as the organized credit sector is probably far outstrips that of any bank, despite the lakhs of branches that the public sector banks might have in totality. But the ability to deliver and, more importantly, make those collections is something which is well recognized, and it is really heartening to find that government has brought in a great scheme where banks can lend to the MFIs and get a sovereign guarantee for a certain amount of that. I think it's a great scheme purely for the fact that the multiplier effect will now be seen. In fact, one of the schemes that SIDBI is planning to do on the back of the money given by RBI is really to try and use alternate data using great fintechs that we have in the country and bring out the nuggets amongst the 200 odd microfinance entities that are operating in the country. And when I say microfinance, it will include the NBFC microfinance as well as the non-NBFCs, and the latter are larger in number, and the latter do manage to deliver credit equally well. And I think the role that SIDBI has is to be able to identify, using so-called conventional tools of risk assessment, but delving into what the analytics and the alternate data could probably provide to us to be able to go to the SBIs and the PNBs of today and say that this is our due diligence. We have put in 25 crores. Now you come with 100 crores. And that's really where I find SIDBI has a tremendous ability and a role that we will be sort of implementing very, very shortly. The scheme is already in place, and it's all about understanding how much credit could be delivered through the likes of the MFI industry. It's the MFI and the NBFC industry which, even though certain critics might be talking about the fact that interest is still at around 20% or thereabouts, but the fact is that every rupee delivered to the individual self-employed 5.5 crores or 6 crores number, we are one step sort of better than asking them to get money at 48 and 60%. So I think, right now the challenge is really to get to that particular segment and provide organized sector credit to them. And by doing so, we would have taken the first step towards formalization. So that, in fact, is another great area. It's an absolute focus area for SIDBI. Given the digital tools that are available in the country, given the fact that we have something called an India Stack, it's really about utilizing the partners and the presence of so many fintechs, from the CSCs to a variety of fintechs, the Khata books, the Tally. In fact, we've had a great discussion with all these entities. And the whole idea is to try and get the micro units to be KYC ready and credit ready. And that's really how we're trying to put it out, because even the multiple KYCs that are needed in the financial system is something that we could tackle. It's already there in what is known as the CKYC system, which is growing every day. And the whole idea is to ensure that we use that CKYC system for a common KYC database. It's still not happening. There are still many doubts that the larger players have in that, but I think there's a way to sort it out. So once, a small entity is KYC'd, has the ability to have a standard income expenditure account, then we could present that to the organized sector lenders. And here we're talking about NBFCs and even banks, for them to be able to understand the financial profile of a particular entrepreneur. So I think most banks today do not go anywhere near the self-employed, for the reason that their conventional procedures of giving credit do not allow it. So the whole idea is that SIDBI, being a bank itself, but being a bank and much more sensitive to the requirements of the MSME sector, would be able to provide a standardized format that would be more acceptable to the conventional lenders in the society. So the formalization of MSEs is really a big venture, for the reason that we're probably talking about 3 to 4 crore small micro, not small, but micro nano units, if I may say, which need to come into the formalized sector and try and get credit from the organized sector. We therefore move immediately to the other sector, which is, as Dr. Rajiv Kumar said, there are something in the region of about, maybe 25 to 30 lakh entities, which are already in what we would call as the medium and small sectors. And it's really for these units where I think the latest amendment in the factoring bill will make a big difference. We have the TREDS platforms. In fact, SIDBI is a co-owner of 2 of the TREDS platforms. This is a great step forward to be able to move to reducing the delays in payments to the MSMEs. And I think that's something which all of you must have heard repeatedly. It's an area which, unfortunately, the best of brains in the policy sector have not been able to really try and get a solution going for that. And, the traditional credit cycles, which we were hoping would be 45 days as per the MSMED Act, are, spilling over to 120 and 180 days. And that's really what's, I think, killing the MSMEs, of course, that much more acutely in the current pandemic phase. But the fact is that to be able to bring 25 lakh entities onto the TREDS, where today the numbers are somewhere in the region of 10 to 12,000, that's another, sort of effort that's being made. And we are all ready to be able to play that role where the MSMEs come on to a particular digital platform. They are taken to Udyam. Udyam registration is done. Their invoices can be brought onto the TREDS platform. And therefore, once they are ready and formalized with the KYC and the necessary contracts that have to be signed with the TREDS platforms, then there is an easy offtake for all the TREDS platforms to be able to bring such MSMEs on board. So, it's a lot of, digital I think, incisive understanding of what the MSMEs actually require. Putting the two together is really what we hope that we'll be able to take forward. And just a last point, I know it's a packed audience, and I think I'm happy to, listen to the very wise views that all of you would be coming forward with. But the last point I'd really like to put down is, there is a requirement for increasing the credit delivery and the kind of products that we need. I mean, there is a loan, there is working capital, but there is also the ability for some of these small units to take something like, 1 crore or 5 crores. Again, we're talking about the slightly larger units from what is probably a debt market or a bond market. And, to be able to disintermediate the credit market is another sort of growth area. Again, flows from the UK Senate committee recommendations. And that's something which is being worked upon, which we would be able to put money into the bonds of smaller companies and smaller entities, and therefore pool those bonds, securitize them, and sell them to the large players in the country. So there are several things that are being worked upon. I'd be happy to get views, comments from any and all of you. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raman. I think very insightful remarks focused on delivery of credit to the MSMEs and the need for enhancing the scale and the types of products that are there. So I think very well thought out, very insightful remarks. With that, let me turn to Mr. Sudhir Garg, who is Joint Secretary ARI in the Ministry of MSMEs, that directly deals with the ministry. This is the ministry which directly deals with the welfare and well-being of MSME sector in India. And Dr. Rajiv Kumar, in his inaugural address, referred to many times what the MSMEs ministry has been doing and what the thinking in the government is about. So I think Mr. Garg can distill some of the thinking and approach of the government in his ministry that directly deals with the sector. I think that would be very timely to hear him. So over to you, Mr. Sudhir Garg. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, all my dear friends, colleagues, and seniors. I am thankful to Institute for Studies in Industrial Development for arranging such an insightful roundtable conference, which is very, very pertinent in the present era. I am very much thankful to Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Vice Chairman Niti Aayog, Vice Chairman Niti Aayog. His statement is really notable that never busy for MSME. So this is the commitment of Government of India for the MSME, which is visible from the highest level. And I am also thankful to him that at every opportunity, he has been supporting the ministry to help the MSMEs in whatever way possible. The main theme of today's talk is that sustainable growth aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic. I want to start my talk with a positive note. What can happen? I want to share the story of year 2021. The whole year we were facing the challenges of pandemic. There was a thought that the industrial growth will be low, no doubt. It has been affected. But one program that this ministry is running is that Prime Minister's Employment Guarantee Program. Now, we in the ministry sat down that how can we increase employment through this program? We worked out that how can we ease out the entrepreneurs in filing their applications, in taking them to the banks, supporting them in getting their loans, we also talked to the banks that how can we increase their acceptance of applications. Worked with the banks to create a scorecard model in which any applicant who gets more than 60% marks, only such applications goes to the banks. Also eased out some of the processes called district level committees were there. So we eased out all those things, brought down the whole process, approval process from about 1 year to 3 months. Now, when the banks came forward, we created a model in which ease of doing business was possible. Now, I'm happy to say that this scheme, which was started somewhere in 2008-9, since then, last year, despite the challenges of COVID, we were able to support largest number of entrepreneurs. Banks supported sanctioned loans for around 1 lakh entrepreneurs, creating a job opportunities for around 8 lakh people in the country. This was better almost by 50% vis-a-vis the previous year. So these are the possibilities which are there in the system. This is what can happen when we join hands together. And this is also speaking about the entrepreneurship capability of the country. The rural masses, the rural India can really do so much of miracle. I want to share with you another story, a program initiated by Niti Aayog to download all the central government schemes in a block called Sevapuri in Varanasi. Now, in this Sevapuri block, we were again pushing various schemes of the Ministry of MSME and again the Prime Minister's Implement Program. In this block, when we worked closely with the banks, we could many-fold increase the entrepreneurs who were supported. In so many years, almost 3 years, we supported around 8 to 10 people only in the PMEGP program in one block. And when we did a job together with the banks in a concerted, in a dedicated manner, we could support around 40 people in this area. And many of these people were the people who came back to their village, to their area after the challenges of COVID, and they were able to start the business only in 3 to 4 months. So this is the potential available in the system. This is what can happen. And this is what my request is, that how do we join hands to encash these opportunities? Now, post-COVID scenario, the biggest challenge, well, this challenge was always there, but it has now come to the forefront, is that to remain competitive all the time, how to reduce the costs, how to develop new products in a short durations, how to make your manufacturing and supply chain flexible, how to improve your quality in this era of e-commerce, where a single negative report can really make your business put to zero level. So with these challenges, the ministry is running a number of programs. Key programs among them is that to set up a large number of technology centers across the country. 15 such technology centers are already taking shape. Many of them already started at a cost of around rupees 3,000 crore. And Government of India has also agreed to set up more centers across the country at a cost of around 6,000 crore, for which various models like PPP model and other possibilities are being worked out. But through these technology centers, we want to take technology to the footsteps of the MSMEs. Because as Dr. Rajiv Kumar has pointed out, two main challenges. One is the finance and second is the technology gap for the MSMEs. Technology is the key thing. These technology centers will also provide solutions in the Industry 4.0, which can really make things fully visible to my entrepreneurs all the time, wherever they are, whenever it is possible. They can see what is happening in the factories, in the units, and they can really utilize the resources in a far, far better manner. The ministry is running various programs like lean management, lean manufacturing practices, which can easily bring down the cost of their manufacturing by 30 to 50%. So this program is being pushed by the ministry in a big way so that industry can improve their competitiveness. We are also closely working to set up a number of centers of excellence in which partnership with the industry and various high-end institutes is being developed. We did a small experiment in Maharashtra where around 20 engineering colleges were roped in for providing solutions to the industry. And in a very short time, large number of solutions were created by young brains of these colleges, and in the process, some IPRs are also generated. So in a way, the MSME is also getting solutions, but the youth is also able to create IPRs, and also they are moving on the path of becoming entrepreneurs. So this is the potential in which this program is now being expanded in other states. Like Punjab, we already done it, but many more states will be covered in the due course of time. We have realized now very strongly that utilization of manpower, machine, material, processes, marketing, where the money is going, so visibility of the money, all these things are very, very important. And digitization is the best solution for all these areas. So the ministry is putting a lot of focus on digitization of all the processes, and various programs are being run for digitization of the MSMEs. One of my requests to my fellow members is that availability of finance to the MSMEs. Yes, banks are providing loans. Various schemes are already available, but still the cost of finance through the NBFCs is very high. So if you can work out methods to provide cheaper loans to the SIDBI I'm particularly referring to, if you can work out cheaper loans to NBFCs, then I think the finance to the MSME sector will be better eased out, and there's a strong informal connection between the NBFCs and the MSMEs, so that informal method can also be roped in, and I believe that through these mechanisms, the growth in the industry can happen much, much faster. I strongly feel that it has been till now to create, or rather it has really happened that the large number of big industries are near the big towns, big cities. So that's why the MSME is also going close to that. And in the whole process, the cost of all the things have grown very high. So today is the time to think that how can we shift our industry to smaller towns in the hinterlands where the infrastructure is now improving, digitization is happening. So there's a need to think on those lines, that what kind of policy instruments we can create so that we can push our industry to smaller towns where the manpower is available at a cheaper cost. With a better infrastructure, I think material will not be an issue. Land building cost will also come down for the industry, and in the process, the competitiveness of the industry will come down. Post-COVID, another thing which has happened is that distributed living, which is going to happen in a much, much faster manner. I remember talking to one of my friends his son was running some businesses in Goa, and I said in the COVID time, he must be facing a lot of challenges. He said, no, he's doing a good business. And how? He said, because all the people from Mumbai are now shifted to Goa, and they're doing all work from home from Goa, and they're rented out all his places, and he's running good business. His business is now full. So this distributed living is now going to happen with everyday passing. Now, so because solar power is available, medical facilities are improving. So that is one area which is now opening up, and we have to now see how can we encash upon this opportunity and in the process create new businesses and also able to create reduced cost for the businesses. We in the ministry are also laying extra emphasis on supporting remanufacturing, waste to wealth, development of smarter villages, additive manufacturing, and also new areas like e-mobility, artificial intelligence, VR-based solutions, etc. So with that, I think I would like to close my discussion, and I can only say that in our pursuit to take this present from $2 trillion to $5 trillion, I think MSMEs can act really angels who has the capacity to change fast in a very dynamic world, and they're driven by highly dynamic and aspirational youth of this country. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I would like to remain connected with this group to create various new instruments so that we can work together to move on that path that we have talked about. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Garg, for sharing your very optimistic note on which you conclude. I think that was very heartening. The youth of this country powering these MSMEs to drive the national growth agenda. I think this is the message which comes out very clearly from your remarks. And so we will certainly be in touch with you to do some work together for the benefit of MSME sector of this country. Now, with that, let me turn to Professor Bala Subramania of Indian Institute of Science. As you know, Professor Bala Subramania has been doing a lot of work on MSMEs and the startups, and he has actually written books on startups ecosystem of the country. So with that introduction, very brief introduction, I want to ask Professor Bala Subramania to share some of his thoughts about the startup ecosystem, and in the context of this industry 4.0 or the digital revolution that is coming up, how small and medium enterprises of the country are poised to take advantage of that, or they will be challenged. So I'm sure you have some thoughts about this to share with us. Over to you, Bala.
Good evening. Thank you, Professor Nagesh Kumar, for inviting me for this policy roundtable, giving me an opportunity to express my views. Based on my work experience and the knowledge and exposure that I have got to this sector for more than a couple of decades, I would like to briefly make reference to some of the challenges and prioritize them. As we all know, the MSME sector contribution is well acknowledged, and even the challenges are, I think, very succinctly explained by experts who are here already. But I would say the most formidable challenge that the sector is facing is with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, one thing that I have observed is it is not clear what kind of damage COVID-19 pandemic has made to the sector. There are different kinds of estimates appearing in the media. And this is true in the context of any macroeconomic crisis as far as the MSME sector is concerned. So my first point is, it is absolutely essential to understand the extent of damage that the COVID-19 pandemic has done or has been doing, so that we'll be able to put in place appropriate policy measures to counter this challenge. Now, we all know that there's a mechanism to count SME birth rate periodically through a registration process. But at what rate the enterprises exit from the sector due to 1, graduation, and 2, closure, not known. And when I say graduation, now again, the reference has already been made. A substantial proportion of the MSMEs is operating in the unregistered sector. And they are predominantly comprising, I would say, micro enterprises. And we have no idea at what rate these micro enterprises exit, at what rate these micro enterprises graduate to become small. Similarly, we have no idea at what rate small enterprises exit and at what rate small enterprises graduate to become medium. And finally, we do not know at what rate medium enterprises exit due to graduation on the one hand and closure on the other. This is point number one. Now, point number two, 10th plan document has very clearly recorded that the potential for promoting subcontracting relationship between MSMEs and large-scale enterprises is huge, but only a small proportion of this potential was exploited. This was as on 2000. Now, subsequently, no official data has revealed the extent of ancillarization or subcontracting existing in the sector. It is very important to know to what extent MSMEs are linked or to what extent MSMEs are networked in their immediate ecosystem or in the external ecosystem at large. Next, internationally as well as within the country, we all know that the potential for MSMEs to undertake innovation is huge. However, there are only survey-based reports, including National Knowledge Commission and NISTATS. They have brought out that only my negligible percentage of MSMEs are really undertaking innovations. I myself have conducted several studies in the context of Bangalore, Karnataka, and in the context of some other regions as well. And we have found out that MSMEs do have the potential, and those who innovate, they do better. They are able to internationalize. They are able to grow over a period of time. However, at the national level, we have no idea about the extent of MSMEs engaged in technological innovation. Please note, technological innovations, they, on the one hand, they generate intellectual property, and they even encourage the emergence of new ventures. And on the other hand, it enables MSMEs to reach the international market. That is the next point. So I would say a database must focus on, one, the extent of networks that MSMEs have, two, the extent of innovations, incremental or radical, product or process-based innovations undertaken by them on a periodic basis. Thirdly, about internationalization. Now, we all know that the international trade is predominantly controlled by the global value chains of multinational corporations. And there are, again, varied estimates. They say that about 3/4 to 4/5 of the global trade is controlled by the global value chains. And we also know that most of the emerging economies have been increasing their SME footprints in the global value chains of MNCs for their gain. So therefore, Indian SMEs can just not afford to ignore the steadily growing dominance of global value chains in the global arena. Therefore, it's also important that we need to have a periodic, reliable database to throw light on about their birth rate, about the rate of graduation from one subsector to another, about the rate of graduation from the sector to the large-scale sector, and the rate of closure. And it's important to know the extent of networks. It is important to know the kind of innovations and the intensity of innovations undertaken by the MSMEs. And lastly, it's important to know how do they enter the international market, because though we often make reference to their total contribution to total exports in terms of value, if you see the number of MSMEs which have entered the international market, according to one estimate, just about a couple of percentage of MSMEs only have entered the international market. That means to the extent of more than 95 to 98% of the MSMEs are only focusing on the domestic market. So the real challenge lies in enabling an increasing number of MSMEs to reach the international market. Now that means, to conclude, my final statement is, if an increasing proportion of MSMEs has to enter the international market to join the global value chains of MNCs, they need to be competitive. Now, if they have to be competitive, they need to be innovative. Now, if they have to be innovative, they need to overcome their resource constraints. Now, if they have to overcome their resource constraints, they need to develop interfirm relationships with large-scale enterprises or network with similar other MSMEs. Therefore, interfirm linkages, innovation, and internationalization should form the watchwords of Indian policymakers in their strategy for SME development in the immediate future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Balasubramania. I think you have raised a very important issue of enabling MSMEs to take advantage of the opportunities that are available in the international market. And for that, what is needed? Innovation, competitiveness, and their link with the other larger firms. I think a very, very important theme by itself, and we will be in touch with you to explore more ideas on some of these issues that you have raised. Now, I'm told that one of our speakers, Ms. Sushma Mothania, Director General of India SME Forum, she has to leave for some other commitment. So I would like to give her the floor to her now before Dr. Rajni Agarwal. And so, Sushma, you have the floor, but please limit yourself to 5 minutes because we are running short of time.
Thank you very much for in giving me this opportunity, Nageshji, to come and speak. And I've heard so many intellectuals and eminent speakers speak. I will try to restrict my points within 5 minutes assigned to me. And thank you, Rajni-ji. I mean, I'm being allowed to speak before you. So thanks for bearing with me. I would like to make just a few points. And over the last few days, we have seen some major developments for MSMEs, one being the change in classification minus the export turnover. And second very important development has been inclusion of traders and wholesalers as part of MSMEs. Now, I would like to highlight what are the ramifications of this classification that has been introduced. Today, a company which is exporting between 5 crore to 50 crore, there are 11,502 micro units which are classified as micro, and they have an export turnover of between 5 to 50 crores. There is another company, there are two companies who have export turnover between 50 crore to 200 crore, and yet they are a micro unit. Okay, so what is a micro unit to us? On the other hand, RBI says that 25 crore of working capital is basically a monthly requirement of a MSME. So if that is the requirement, then we should say that at least a 3-month requirement should be around 75 crores. So then what is the classification of a micro unit? Whereas we offer a collateral free loan of 2 crore under the CGT MSE to an MSME. So again, what is a micro or what is an MSME to us? On the other hand, we say a micro unit is eligible for mudra loan up to 10 lakhs. So again, what is a micro unit or what is an MSME for us? There is another classification or another policy that says that any startup which crosses 100 crore turnover will no longer be a startup. So again, where is our MSME or what is our understanding of MSME? Corporate Affairs Ministry says that, if you need to reduce your compliance burden, you need to have a certain capex or a capital requirement of that company. So why are other framework and policies and compliances not tuned with those? When we say one land, one tax, one GST, then we have 6.33 crores MSMEs. we have more than 8 crore traders, but we have 1.33 crore units who are registered under GST. So what are we promoting? Are we promoting most of these companies to remain under 40 lakhs and not apply for GST? So are we incentivizing companies, MSMEs, or are we facilitating these companies to work on cash basis or just remain on cash working? When ELCGS was announced, it was announced by Honorable FM, and it was the eligibility was only for 30 lakh companies who were having banking facilities with banks. So then, I mean, what about the others? What about 6.33 crore MSMEs which were facing all these problems? So primarily, if we are having same facilities we are offering to traders and manufacturers, how are we incentivizing manufacturers? And again, if there is no incentivization for manufacturers, then where is Make in India? So if we are talking about Make in India, our policies need to be more towards incentivizing manufacturers. We have so many members who have now shifted from manufacturing in India to, they have shifted base in Dhaka and Vietnam and China and other places, because it's much easier to import, become traders here and shift base somewhere else. So is that what we have in mind for our MSMEs? Everybody talks about MSMEs. Everybody understands that it is such an important element, backbone of our economy. But do we really understand MSMEs, and are our policies really MSME friendly? We spoke about production linked incentives, and it was announced in Parliament that it is not for MSMEs, but only large companies. So our very senior Sir Rajivji said that 99% are micro units. So if PLI is not for micro, it's not for MSME, then is this only for that 1% large companies? So, I mean, what kind of programs are we creating? What kind of policies we are creating? There is no congruence whatsoever. My only request on behalf of our MSMEs to all the policymakers is there needs to be some congruence, some alignment, some uniformity and standardization and single focus in terms of what these MSMEs actually require, what actually they need on the ground, what MSMEs do. Our own MSME ministry has released a report which says that 64% of MSMEs are into service sector and 36% are in manufacturing. So what is the kind of credit support we have for services? Our bankers don't have, schemes and products which promote services. So, these are the things that I wanted to highlight. My request, it's just, as of now, I just say there needs to be two basic solutions. One, congruence in terms of all the policy making, all the ministries and all the related departments that will help flourishing the MSMEs, and incentivization of these MSMEs for import substitution, and remove the discrimination in terms of importer, exporter, trader, retailer. There needs to be one, industrial policy which should help MSMEs to flourish and help India, Make in India and Atmanirbhar. So with that, thank you very much for giving me this time and hearing me out. Thank you.
Thank you, Sushma ji. And this is, I think, a perspective coming from an entrepreneur side. And you have very rightly pointed out that in one country, there should be one treatment for all units, large or small. They should all be allowed and empowered to contribute their, might or their potential to national development, such as Make in India or whatever program. Very well articulated. Now I turn to Dr. Rajni Agarwal, again an entrepreneurial perspective, but this time, Dr. Rajni Agarwal runs this Federation of Indian Women Entrepreneurs. And so among the entrepreneurs, the women entrepreneurs facing special difficulties, if that is the thing. So we hear from Dr. Agarwal about the perspective of women entrepreneurs. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Nagesh. Thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. I'm really thoroughly enjoying, and I'm really very, very grateful that I could hear people like, Mr. Rajiv and Mr. Bala Subramaniam and Sushma ji and many others. It has been really, really eye-opening to some extent for me because Sushma ji has, whatever she has written, whatever she has spoken shows the kind of controversies we are going into. And actually, this is the fate which MSME always goes through. And in fact, I feel that for women entrepreneurs, we have been talking for years together. And I have to say that women entrepreneurship is a potential gold mine, which can play an important role enriching the country, not only enriching the country, but also uplifting social economic goals, for which we are really striving hard. And also becoming more important, especially with the government's new mission of achieving 5 trillion economy target by 2025. Now, the focus on women entrepreneurship systematic and collaborative efforts need to be made across a multitude stakeholders and bring them to the forefront of economy. And that's what we generally lack it somewhere because everyone is making on an individual basis all the policies, and we are not able to converge at any place or at any even MSME is not able to get everything together and converge it at a particular point. Now, women entrepreneurs have experienced a massive decline in revenue, whatever the pandemic has done. And the research showed that 75% women have been negatively impacted, and 25% have witnessed the revenue of their businesses nearly wiped out. So, women entrepreneur has a really bigger shock. Most of the entrepreneurs' businesses have not returned to the pre-COVID levels, pre-COVID-19 levels. Only selected women entrepreneurs have been able to return to that level. Now, entrepreneurs that experience fastest recovery, like food and the health-connected products, they also recovered back and who experimented and adopted digitization in various parts of their businesses models. They have been able to revive back. Now, women have been quick to shift their business models with a greater relevance, I will say. I was surprised when I spoke to a friend of mine who is an entrepreneur and she's doing very well. She is into placement basically more. And she was also doing business with the GEM, her marketing of placement. And when I spoke to her that what's happening because there is no placement at present taking place. So she said that they shifted to manufacturing sanitization chemicals. We shifted to making masks, and we shifted to all those instruments which are required, like for oxygen machines and all those things. So these kind of agile attitude amongst women entrepreneurs has really helped some of them. Now, working remotely has been really effective, but it also increased domestic responsibilities because the home staff has not been coming. So everything women has to do, irrespective of her status, irrespective of her busy schedule, irrespective of her level. Now, some experienced flexibility of time in the flexibility of time has really recorded the productivity, and it increased while working from home. And some experience drop in productivity attributed to the due to the domestic responsibilities and distractions taking place at home. Now, the agility demonstrated by women have altered businesses and the social dynamics in a big way. And it really needs an all hands approach to fairly, economics calls for some kind of a deliberate efforts to bring women into the field of entrepreneurship through targeted interventions. Now, I feel let us think about what can be those targeted interventions. Now, the key imperatives I feel are we need to ensure that making intervention gender responsive. Still after a long time, we are facing this issue continuously. The gender response is very, very negative. Of course, things have changed a lot. People have started because the government of India has made a lot of incentives, and they have created the environment in such a manner that people have to accept those things, and they have to accept that the women entrepreneur is equally important. But still, the financial services are not very responsive, I feel, because financial services need to be more inclusive and the inclusive in the sense, because when you go to city, of my members, when they go to city, they are turned back saying that we do not look after service industry. If you see the MSME definition, the MSME is for enterprises, and when we say enterprises, means service industry. So the CP is meant especially for MSME, so they are supposed to look after and they should be supporting. So the financial inclusiveness, the financial services have to be very, very inclusive for women. And focus on digital inclusion is again important. Then, of course, we are talking about all general things as a startup, manufacturing, travel, travel and tourism. All these have really got badly impacted, and it will be continuing, I think, for a longer time. Now, as an entrepreneur, we have tied up with an organization which has just recently come up about 4 months back. It's called Consortium for Associations. Now we are about 40 associations who have gone for a mega survey, listing all the things that whatever the government policies, whatever the government support has been given during this period of last 2 years, in what way it was supporting the MSMEs and in what way it has not supported. First of all, in 2020, the government was very slow. In 2021, they were real quick, and they have been able to at least reach to some entrepreneurs. So,
Dr. Agarwal, could you kindly wrap up, because we still have.
So I simply wanted to say that mega survey can be it can be shared with you. It's a long 48-page survey which has come out. We have also created the recommendation. I can send you a copy separately. You can send a copy, can be forwarded to Mr. Rajiv Kumar as well, and we can discuss. I mean, that will really give you a clear picture what is happening in this whole ecosystem of MSMEs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal, for not only summarizing the issues and challenges that women entrepreneurs face especially, but also your willingness to share the results or outcomes of this survey that you have conducted. We will definitely look into that and share it upwards to the government partners of ISID. Now, with that, let me turn to Mr. Animesh Saxena, President, Federation of Indian Micro and Small and Medium Enterprises, FISME. So, over to you, Mr. Animesh Saxena.
Thank you, Mr. Nagesh.
In 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Like FISME, we represent 740 small scale associations pan-India. So whatever perspective I'm talking to you is a perspective of the entire country of MSME. You know, the best part is whatever we hear today and what we have been hearing before, the policymakers and decision makers are well aware of the challenges and issues which this sector is facing. The problem is the solutions. Unfortunately, the solutions which are being offered so far, they are not meeting the requirement of, they are far away from the ground reality. As my previous speakers, Sushma ji and Rajni, both said that whatever the government has announced in last 2 years, especially during COVID, they were targeting to a very, very specific and a small segment of the MSME universe. Out of the 6 crores, very limited number of that. So why this is when the government and policymakers, they're aware of the issues, why they are not able to come up with a scheme which meets our requirement. And you know, the best document for this week only, the Parliament Standing Committee on MSME has come out with this report. They had a wide consultation with all the stakeholders from the government, from the banks, from the associations, and it's a really complete document. And they have given a slew of recommendations, which are definitely very, very effective, which if they are implemented in the right earnest, they'll be very, very effective in addressing the challenges. I'm not going to repeat the challenges which my previous speakers have already told, liquidity, payment issues, and all these things. I am talking about the solutions. What a government and the policymaker should consider. First, there has to be easy availability of affordable credit without asset-based collateral. Rajiv Kumar ji talked about that they are already working on it. We want them to expedite this process where the entire financial ecosystem, either is a fintech or the PSUs, the banks, they come up with a product which meets, credit is available, easy access. Because the PSUs, banks have failed. They are badly missing the last mile connectivity, and they still go by an old norms of asset-based collaterals. Second is the payment guarantee, assurance of the payment or writer. No matter government made a law of 45 days, still you see the PSUs are not paying on time. Leave apart the private sector players, large corporates or medium size, even the PSUs are not paying. So how to ensure that the payments are so a similar platform, which again Rajiv has talked about it, like on the lines of trades, where every invoice, because what is happening, trade is why it's not successful, because all the big companies, they are arm twisting the suppliers, MSME suppliers, not to post their invoices. If they want to continue working with them, don't post your invoice on the trade platform. They discourage you. So to avoid that, there has to be a mandatory, some platform where every invoice which is raised under GSTN framework, bank can go and purchase that and give you the money right away. So that has to be it. Third, the facilitation council. Most of the states in our country have created the facilitation council for any payment related disputes. But problem is they do their job, but it's not binding. The moment the decision goes against the favor of a large company, they approach the higher courts. What happens? MSME cannot go and fight in the courts. They have no money. So there has to be a law on that mandatory. Either 75% has to be paid, and then they go and approach the higher court, so that at least you are covered of your cost. And the fourth is, this technology and knowledge center. What is happening? The word of our quality is, we all know that we are not considered a good quality maker. Our efficiency is poor. There is no innovation. But how an MSME entrepreneur will come to know about the new innovations, the new machinery available, new technology, and new better work practices? So if you see, every state, they used to have a district industry center. They are completely defunct, and now probably they are outdated also. They have to be revived. Every district in our country, either in the Atal Incubation Center or whatever scheme, make a modern incubation and technologies resource center, where if I'm living in any district, I want to improve my product, or I'm a new entrepreneur, I want to get into this business, I walk into that center, learn about the new technology, new, better work practices, the best available in the world. And then I start working on this. So these are the 4 suggestions I have within limited time. If the government can do it, MSMEs is the backbone. Everyone recognizes 50% contribution export, GDP as a thing. But in what state we are? If you are not, and we are the only solution for the large youth, the biggest youth population in our country to provide, in the world, to provide them the jobs. If we are not there, large corporates are not providing any jobs these days. They are going on automation. So we are the one who are providing the jobs. So please take care of us. Thank you, Dr. Nagesh.
Thank you very much, Animesh. I think you have very specific recommendations to make to the government, and I'm sure we will work with you and take these forward to the government and to Dr. Rajiv Kumar. In particular, I like your idea of turning the district industry center into incubation centers, right, and giving access to technology for the entrepreneurs. So we will work with you. But thank you for those remarks. Let me turn to another of the MSME, federations, and which is actually a more global in approach. World Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, Dr. Sanjeev Layak, the Executive Secretary of WASME. Are you there, Dr. Layak? I don't hear anything. So maybe he's having some connectivity problems. So let me then turn to my own colleague, Dr. Akhilesh Sharma, member of ISID faculty, to share his remarks, which will be based on a study that was conducted at ISID very recently. And Akhilesh was coordinating that. So Akhilesh, you have the floor. Akhilesh?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, sir. I am the last speaker, and after listening views and remarks of so many people, I have less to share something new. But I would like to share with you all my key findings, key suggestions, what we derive from my own study. And in 2019, we conducted a study assessing the credit problems of MSMEs in Delhi and Uttar Pradesh. We covered 6 districts of Uttar Pradesh, and we interacted the bank officers of around 62 bank branches, including lead district managers, and 271 firms. From all the stakeholders, we realized that there is the serious problem, that is the attitude problem. And I'm not saying that the attitude of only the government is responsible for all the problems. There is the problems for the entrepreneur side also. We have listened to 3-4 entrepreneurs here, but entrepreneurs are not coming forward for the registration. And even the Professor Rajiv Kumar had also mentioned, and some of other speakers have mentioned, the informality is the bigger challenge. When even bank officials and the entrepreneurs both said that they are both sides are not aware about the about the schemes, government schemes of the government that are being introduced by the government. So in my view, there is a need to increase the formalization of this MSME sector, and that should be done on the mission base. Even in the COVID context, government was not able to reach every enterprises, and that was the biggest challenge for the government. And that's why there were umbrella policies, and only the few sections of the enterprises have been benefited by this. And there is, so I want to highlight that yes, district industrial centers needs very serious administrative reforms, and even the applications forwarded by the district industrial centers and the committee that also comprises of the bank's personnel, only the success rate is 25%. So you can see how much cost the banks are bearing in processing the loan applications of the small tickets loans. and entrepreneurs lack the entrepreneurial skills, financial literacies, and awareness about this scheme. So we need to serious reforms, administrative reforms at the DIC centers. There is a need for the industry, academia, and the DIC interface, where all three can come forward and assist the revamp of the DIC and help proactively to the MSME sector in terms of the awareness, in terms of the formalization. Other point I would like to mention here about the data, reliability of data, that Mr. Pala has very clearly pointed out that for the MSME sectors, we lack the reliable data. And in 2007, 8, 6, 7, we have the MSME census. After that, no MSME census. And 2010 and 11, there was the MSME related survey of the unincorporated enterprises. And 2015, 16. After that, there is no reliable data. So here I would like to suggest even that there should be a survey, annual survey like that. We have the annual survey of industry. There should be annual survey of MSMEs, so that we can get the timely needed data from the MSME segments, and we can design and we can appropriate policy and give the feedback to the government. I would like to mention here that in 2019, government was planning to have industrial production index for the MSME sector, but somehow it couldn't happen. And they were planning to take the help of the MSME census or the unincorporated surveys and ASI data, but that were not sufficient. The unincorporated enterprises survey have the only 150 products, and that is not sufficient for having the index of industrial production for the MSME. So I would like to suggest there should be annual surveys or periodic survey of the 3 years, you can say, for the MSME sectors. With these words, thank you very much. I would like to say.
Thank you, Akhilesh, for very succinct three practical points. And I like particularly the point which was also made by other speakers, that the data is a key to design appropriate policies. And we are very much deficient in terms of data on the MSME sector. So need for regular periodic surveys of MSMEs is the need of the hour. And, I think that is a point which everyone in this group will agree to. Now, with that, we have heard all our speakers, unless Dr. Sanjeev Layak has re-emerged or connected. Are you there, Dr. Nayak? I don't hear a voice. Anyhow, we are close to reaching the time for this event, and I would very much like to open the floor for open discussion. And in particular, there are a couple of specific points already made in the chat box. There is one addressed to Mr. Sudhir Garg. Can MSME technology centers act as active link between R&D laboratories of CSIR, ICAR, ICMR, and others, so that the MSMEs have access to R&D being carried out in these institutions, and also maybe provide financial assistance to these MSMEs to make use of R&D in various laboratories of the country, thereby helping MSMEs to be technologically competent and take advantage of emerging technologies like Industry 4.0, automation, IoT, etc. And this is a point made by Dr. Ashwini Gupta, ex-advisor DSIR. So, Mr. Sudhir, since this is very specifically addressed to you, would you like to take this question? You are muted. Sudhirji, can you unmute yourself and take this question?
I think he has not heard at all.
You are still muted, Sudhirji. Or any other panelists who would like to take this question? Professor Bala? You are muted also.
Yeah. Yes. Can I have the question again? Quickly.
Yes. Well, it is on the chat box. It is basically saying that could there be, an interaction between the national laboratories under CSIR, ICMR, ICAR, and also ICSSR to feed their technologies to
Yeah,
MSME?
technology resource centers should be able to act as the link between the two.
Yeah.
I also like the other session made by, I think, one of the SME representatives, that it is extremely important and essential to revitalize the DIC network across the country. And they should take the responsibility to build relationship between institutes and SMEs, particularly at the district headquarters level. I think that will be of great help. And they can even involve the earlier, it is called SISIs, now they are called micro, small and medium enterprises institutes. Some of them have been converted into technology resource centers. Yes, they should be able to act as the link. That's a good, wonderful session.
Good. Thank you. I'm happy that you agree with this suggestion made by Dr. Gupta, the former advisor to DSIR. Now, I see another hand raised on the screen, HPR Lerodin, if I am reading it correctly. You have the floor. Quickly, point you want to make? You are muted. Hello?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
just now only I'm allowed to unmute from the controller. Okay, thank you. I thought I would not share anything, but I'm an advisor, banking industry and tourism from the Northeastern Council Secretariat, Shillong. And I'm so happy that someone had raised up the necessity to revamp the district industry center. You know, the MSME ministry, they have given a lot of good schemes, but there is no identified executing organization, because we seem to forget about the DIC, who are with the people who would explain the whole scheme to the public, but we are not giving any responsibility to take forward all the schemes. And also, like all the banks are not very much willing to help our people. So this DIC has to be very, very strong if we really do promote the MSME. Otherwise, like whatever we are talking about, survey and everything is to be done by the DIC. But if you see, particularly the Northeast, the DIC people, you will see only the stubborn people are remaining there, because the government is, I think, seems to be forgetting their importance, their role, and everything. So there are many points which I want to share, but since three of you have, I think 4 of you have mentioned about this, I'm so happy, and that's why I came on board, because I have been discussing with Niti also that Government of India seems to be forgetting the TIC, which is available machineries with a little effort, which can be revived, so that it will be more useful and they can bridge the gap between the bank and the ministry and the citizen. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Please take forward in a very strong manner. Otherwise, we are nowhere. We can't implement anything. The entrepreneurs cannot take anything forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
this
sir.
point. Yes. Rene wants to make a point. I see his hand raised. Rene, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Nagash, because I think that a few people were speaking about technological learning and innovation. That's a topic very dear to our hearts, and UNIDO is doing quite some work on there. It's actually true that we are all having our speculations on how innovation works and who's there, but we notice that there is quite a lot of misunderstanding between the knowledge-based institutions and the MSME sector. So it's not necessarily on the same page in terms of talking on that. And I think that also this was also referred to then that we need to do technological upgradation to be part of the global value chain, which as we should all keep in mind that global value chains is actually not as global as it looks like. It's more like 3 manufacturing hubs which are there, which feed into there, and a more a hub and spoke model which is there. But it's clear that if we want to be in a global value chain, that's work that UNIDO has done, then we need to be first competitive, and then we need to also be targeted. We can't say we want to sell everything everywhere because we won't get anywhere then. So we need to be very specific on which tasks we would do, and that has been very much done by the countries in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and so on. Be very specific on this task we can do and this task we can perform. But then coming back to the technological learning, I think that there is a lot of interest also from UNIDO side on the systems of innovation. And traditionally, of course, we see then the triple helix model of government, manufacturers, and research providers, or knowledge-based institutions, as it goes formally. I think from the work that UNIDO is doing globally, there's more and more emphasis on the missing element, which is the arbitrageurs, who are the technical institutions who are translating this, because even if you bring these connections together. And I think the several have highlighted the lack of empirical data, and in the absence of empirical data, we can find case studies and then design policies around case studies. I wanted to, in that context, highlight that UNIDO just started with DST, Department of Science and Technology, National Manufacturing Innovation and Innovation Systems Survey, which is essentially trying to do this. So trying to figure out in a statistically significant manner, how are manufacturing firms actually innovating at this point in time? What do they do in terms of innovative business models, innovative marketing, innovative financing, innovative products, and so on? And a lot of the innovation is indeed in terms of is new to the firm and not new to the country, or let alone new to the world. So I think that there's really a great importance that we all commit to be a bit more evidence-based rather than going on a single case and trying to extrapolate that to like a policy prescription, because that has also been what Professor Bala also highlighted, that we have no sense of how many micro are becoming small, how many die out, and how many succeed, which are the type of firms that we should really support to have growth. So I think that is just the point I wanted to add as this discussion. Thank you, Nagesh.
Thank you, Rene. I think a very important point that we need to bring evidence base for making good policies, and for that we need data. And so all that is very well said. I see my colleague Sangeeta, you want to make a point, Sangeeta, based on some work which was done at ISID? Yeah, over to you. You are muted. You are muted still.
Sorry, I was not allowed to unmute.
Yes. Very quickly, please. Yes.
So, sir, I'd just like to bring it to the floor that, as Shushma has also pointed out, that defining MSMEs is a very important thing, as that is, MSMEs definition is important because it's a priority sector for us. In that, with the ambiguities that Shushma had mentioned, something like a turnover. So MSMEs were very difficult to classify before, because you would have a historical value of assets, and by that a very big industry which had established itself in 1970s would still be an MSME. But now with GST and turnover classification of MSMEs along with the capital requirement of it, there are fresh ambiguities that are added, because the gems and jewelry sector and the leather unit, their turnovers are going to be very different. So I'm just trying to say that being defined a micro, small, or medium enterprise is important because it's a priority-based sector, and it seems that we have some, and we have also now expanded the entire ambit of MSMEs. Of course, an inflation based revision of thresholds is important, but at the same time, when you expand the MSME target definition to a greater number of units, the possibility of reaching perhaps the most vulnerable declines. That's my first point. And about the ambiguity of the MSME definitions itself is the second. The third would be the policy interventions that are made by the government under the Atmanirbharta schemes, some of them are, of course, extremely important because they have been trying to reach credit guarantee and a credit line to the MSMEs. That is a very important thing. At the same time, the number of beneficiaries who have been benefited out of the schemes are limited. The reasons for that is the following. One is that only firms that had taken a loan previously were the ones that were eligible for fresh loans. So, that itself limited the number of beneficiaries to a very small number of enterprises. Similarly, in this August forum, it's important to raise the point that while two other schemes, such as the equity scheme, which goes in for the, the share markets launching of the MSMEs, which is already present in the NSE and the, in the stock exchange platforms of the government, there one problem that happens is there are already a handful number of MSMEs that are registered, and there are a various number of issues along with that. Equity management at this stage of the pandemic perhaps is not as helpful for the MSMEs, though it could have been something, if it was previously there, it would have helped their financing a lot. And the last point I want to say is about similarly with the factoring scheme now. Unfortunately, the SIDBI already had tried to launch a scheme in which in the past to address the delay of payments, a special funding scheme by the Small Industries Development Bank had tried to devise a scheme to impose interest rates, interest charges or unpaid bills. But, that did not result in sufficient relief for the MSMEs, unfortunately. So these delay in payments, if they are addressed, and as it was pointed out in this forum, if the PSUs and other bodies could release the number of funds, that would be an excellent initiative too. Because again, trades is something that looks into very small portions of the formal loans of the MSMEs. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this point. I think we need to wrap it up. We have already exceeded time by 12 minutes, but it has been a very rich discussion, and I am sure everyone agrees with me that this was a time very well spent. Many problems and challenges were raised, but many solutions also. Now, I want to really ask our chairman, Ms. Mishra, to make some closing remarks, and we end with that. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nagesh. We've had a very useful discussion on the various issues involved. And as you rightly said, the Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog set the tone for discussions. What the government has doing is very commendable. But what is more important, and what I feel, is that today's session should not end just as an academic exercise. It leads us nowhere. This generally happens in most seminars, good speeches, good suggestions, and that's the end of it. We must follow it up. I think we must have an internal meeting, discussion, and formulate our views, particularly with reference to the challenges that are being faced, such as absence of adequate and timely banking finance, limited capital and knowledge, non-availability of suitable technology, low production capacity, ineffective marketing strategy, constraints and modernization, expansion, non-availability of skilled labor at affordable cost, and follow-up with various government agencies, etc. Now, we should come up with what the IIT-RIT thinking is on these subjects, the policy of this thing, and formulate our views and publicize it, place it across. It might be useful to have a meeting maybe on Zoom with editors of economic papers like Economic Times or Business Standard or Financial Times and others, get their representatives online. And we have to focus on that. These are the challenges that have been faced. It's good that government is doing what, but much more needs to be done to create an impact. And impact is not there at present. Efforts are being made, well-intentioned, but we have to move fast. We have to take it, and I think we should take it as our mission, as a crusade for this sector. Have a standing group to follow it up, meet identify those areas where immediate results are possible, action can be taken. There are other areas where it will take long-term things. So we have to adopt a strategy. Let's think of a strategy, who are the way to approach in the government. Another thing, I think, well, let us see whether we can get the government to amend the CSR rules, where CSR funding is available for the micro sector through NGOs who are working in the rural area. Now that would be of great help, because many, they have large availability of funds, and I think let us try to mobilize funds in whatever direction. So I'm sure Nagesh will be able to initiate action in this direction, and we should have a periodical review meeting of what action has been taken on this session, and very soon we should sort of follow it up with a paper on the subject and pass it on to the media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I think very well said. We need to follow up on what was a very rich discussion. So we will assemble the thoughts which have been presented in this meeting, and we will do the policy advocacy around them. So take them forward, and we will follow it up closely, and we will share them with the Niti Aayog and also with the Ministry of MSMEs. Mr. Sudhir Garg has been sitting throughout, and so we will use all the different channels that we can reach out to the policymakers and see that the voices that have been represented at this forum are reaching their right places. And as you said rightly, we need to persistently work on this issue, because this affects a very large sector of the country, employing 111 million people, as Professor Malhotra had said in his remarks. So this is a very critical sector or segment of the Indian economy. And if we get all of these MSMEs into good health, that ensures rest will follow. So on that note, I really want to thank every one of our speakers today. Everyone brought some very interesting, very useful, very powerful thoughts to the table, which I'm sure we will continue to engage with you and take them forward and have more discussions such as this. Thank you very much on that note, and we will be in touch with all of you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.